Another season is upon us. Freshmen arrive wide-eyed with dreams of future glory, while seniors prepare for their last chance at immortality. There are only a handful of these opportunities in a man's life, a handful of chances to distinguish yourself from the rest. It's on these fields where history is made, where legends begin and heroes triumph. Traditions tell the story of what you represent, of those that forge the legacy you uphold. When you come charging out of the tunnel, 100,000 people will be watching your every move. How you respond to that pressure is what defines you. These are the moments that reveal your toughness, your determination, and your pride. The Roughnecks on the Sooner Schooner. Ralphie charging out of the gate. And Chief Osceola planting his spear. The time has come. Your time is now.
You know, the really funny thing about national championships, speaking of a national championship that's happening later tonight, is that when it comes to the great sport of football, you see all the work that's done in the spring and you see all the work that's being done in the summertime as well, all for 36 hours of gameplay and all for deciding those 36 hours deciding what your fate is when it gets into the month of December, when it gets into January, when we do end up seeing those national championships being decided. So welcome everybody to College Football Red Zone, your exclusive home for 7+ hours of commercial-free college football. And because of the fact that we see a lot of work being done in the spring and summertime, that's why we have that year-round coverage. So if you're joining us here in the month of April, first and foremost, really appreciate you guys doing that. I would really appreciate if you hit that like button as well as hit that subscribe button if you do happen to be brand new to the channel, doing these live shows multiple times a week. And then we have the ongoing First Look series where I give my individual spring rankings as well as give my record predictions. So those videos are coming out once or twice a day for all 138 FBS teams, and that will carry us through that spring and summertime. So lots going on the channel. Make sure you show some love either way. And because tonight is a little bit of a different format than what we've been doing, where we've been previewing every conference, the Big 12 will be coming up on Thursday. This one is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be jumping into the mailbag, going to be answering some questions that you asked us recently, as well as asking what is going down like over the past month and a half ago, and answering some of those questions from the mailbag as well. So just me tonight, nobody else from the crew. So, really appreciate if y'all come through and enjoy this mailbag session. And in the meantime, we have a few questions picked out, but if there is time and there's questions from the audience, I'll give my quick thoughts as well. Gonna try to get done before the national championship game for basketball tips off, because I know that I can't really compete with that. So that's the general plan for tonight. And with that being said, let's go ahead and take a drink because we gotta stay hydrated. Don't worry, nothing crazy in the glass, just some fruit juice. Fruit juice is going to be unnamed because they don't sponsor this channel in any way, shape, or form. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the very first question that we have here tonight. And it comes from a good friend of the channel, More College Football, who asked, if we had to pick one of these projected bottom dwellers to make a bowl game, who are you going to take and why are you taking that specific team? So we got 5 options here. We can pick between Boston College and Stanford of the ACC, Purdue out of the Big 10 as well, Colorado out of the Big 12, and then Arkansas coming out of the SEC as well. So going to go ahead and attack this from a little bit of a process of elimination standpoint. So looking at Stanford and Arkansas, both of those programs are going to be in year number one. So both of them having such horrific seasons in their own fashion. Arkansas was more defensive oriented, where for Stanford it was really a lack of talent across the board on the roster, because both of those head coaching staffs are in year one of their respective tenures. What I'm essentially seeing is that this is going to be not the foundation year, but you're really looking at who are those young guys on your roster that can contribute right away and be part of your foundation that you're going to try to build off of moving forward. So you're trying to figure out what the foundation is. So that's what Stanford and Arkansas is looking at. In the case of Arkansas, that's what Ryan Silverfield is trying to figure out after a relatively successful coaching tenure at the University of Arkansas. And then ditto to Stanford, where you're taking a look at what's going on with the Stanford fan base. Tabitha Pritchard was very recently hired by the man, the myth, the legend, Andrew Luck, who's running the football operations over there. So just a year one operation for both these teams. I don't see either of them making it to a bowl game. Purdue, I would lean a little bit more towards Purdue than those two teams that I mentioned, but still not the most likely out of this list, because I look at Purdue. So I think last year, and I talked about this in the Big Ten preview before, is for Purdue specifically, if you take the average G5 program and you dump them into the Big Ten conference, that was Purdue football in 2024. Now, to the credit of Barry Odom, he did a relatively nice job of being able to recruit in the high school ranks. He does bring in a decent transfer portal class leading into year number two, which is why, and don't just take my word for it, the SP Plus rankings also say this as well. This is going to be an improved roster that Barry Odom is going to have to work with. But because of what happened with the previous coaching staff prior to Barry Odom, the cupboard was laid very empty before Barry Odom arrived in West Lafayette, right? So we're looking at a power conference football team at least this season, compared to asking yourself, what would the average G5 look like in the Big Ten? The thing is, I still think that it is one of the worst power conference teams, and I still think that they're a little bit of a gap between them and the rest of the Big Ten. I think that they're about a year away from realistically competing in the Big Ten and therefore getting an opportunity to be in bowl game. I'm really 2027 is the target to see Purdue get into a bowl game for the first time under Barry Odom. So that's what we're looking at with Purdue. Boston College. What do we see out of Boston College? So Boston College, it seemed like it really bottomed out for the Boston College Eagles last year. And to be honest with you, I'm not really taking Boston College seriously in the 2026 campaign. I just don't know if Bill O'Brien is the right man for the job. I guess he's a little bit more versed in NFL coaching. I know that he was briefly the head coach at Penn State and helped stabilize the ship a little bit at Penn State, in the light of some of those very serious allegations. But I just don't think that he's necessarily someone that understands what Boston College needs in order to be successful. And I don't think the talent level is necessarily there as well. So I'm not looking at Boston College. So that leaves us with the process of elimination in this case. And that is going to be the Colorado Buffaloes in this case. I think Colorado, if I had to pick one, I think Colorado would be my pick in this particular situation. I think that they bring in probably one of the more improved teams just from that transfer portal, right? Big year for Deion Sanders, entering his fourth season as well. He has seen more number retirements than bowl appearances, because we're talking about seeing two numbers retired. Travis Hunter, who that one makes sense because he did win the Heisman Trophy, and then Sadir Sanders also got his jersey retired, and then vice versa. You only had the one bowl appearance, which happened in the 2024 campaign last year. Was a little bit of a disaster for you, but this year you do bring a ton of talent. And I'm talking about 21 players from the transfer portal that, whether it's from the FBS ranks or whether it's somewhere in the FCS, all of those guys have production at their previous stops. Now, the three biggest guys that obviously everyone wants to talk about is DeAndre Moore, the wide receiver out of Texas, Leona LaFou, who is a linebacker from Texas as well, and then Boo Carter, who transfers from Tennessee, definitely a starting caliber defensive back as well. He's going to play safety for this Colorado team. But it's not just those three guys that I'm talking about. They also bring some playmakers from Sacramento State, courtesy of Brandon Marion being hired from Sacramento State. Was their former head coach, is now the offensive coordinator as well. Brings multitude of running backs and wide receivers to work with. Danny Scaldero is a name to watch as well. He had over 1,300 yards in that San Jose offense last season too. So that's another name to watch. And then you want to talk about the number of edge rushers and defensive linemen that they brought as well. This should, at least in theory, just from a pure talent perspective, the defensive talent should also be better as well. So tons of names in here. They obviously lost quite a bit of talent as well. Jordan Seaton is a massive loss. And then Omarion Miller and DJ McKinney, those are tough losses as well. But then you also look at the quarterback situation. I think we do see Julian Lewis get an opportunity to start at the quarterback position as well. Last year, it was kind of a rotation between Caden Salter and Ryan Staub, and it was understood, at least for me, that these were both going to be stopgap type of guys. So because they were stopgap type of players, it was understood that they're just kind of giving Julian Lewis time to develop without getting him killed behind a compromised football team. But now he has a year in a college weight room. He has grown a little bit more mature, able to get stronger and able to understand the game at a little bit more of a deeper level. So maybe we do see Julian Lewis a little bit more. I'm tabbing him as the primary starter. Now, granted, I look at Colorado State not Colorado State, but regular Colorado going in. I still at best see them as a 4-8 team. So I don't see really, it's not likely that I see any of these teams get in. But if I had to pick one, I would definitely pick the Colorado Buffaloes in this particular case, in terms as, projected bottom dweller that's most likely to surprise. I would say Colorado because they probably had the most upside, being the most improved team from a pure transfer portal perspective. Now, got a couple more questions that I definitely want to get around to answering here tonight. Appreciate you guys listening in to the Mailbag live stream where, it is yours truly, and you can listen to the smooth and sweet sound of the Mr. CEO himself. So if you've been enjoying this, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well too. So let's go ahead and check out that second question that we have from the mailbag. And we went all the way back to February to answer this particular question. This is from Tampa 2 College Football. You guys know him, AT from, he's shown up on the show a fair number of times. I believe this was before he ended up becoming part of the College Football Redzone team. I'm not 100% sure there. So this is his question was, who is the overall best player going into 2026? Now, I thought about going in a few different directions, just in terms of names that just come out on the top of my head, right? Whether it is the quarterback position, Dante Moore probably could receive some consideration in this spot. He was slated to be a top 5 pick, and then he ends up returning back to college to play for Oregon. That's a name that comes to mind for me. I also thought about guys like Darian Mensah, who I thought was a very electric quarterback at Duke last year. Going to see him in Miami. He could put up some huge numbers, being around even more talent than what he had available to him in Durham. Then how about the wide receiver position? I mean, Malachi Toney was electric in the college football playoff. And then what about the defensive side of the ball? Dylan Stewart is a really electrifying player to watch on the edge for South Carolina. Cole Parrish might be one of the better two-way players in the country. Was a little bit underutilized at Minnesota. Will get a chance to prove himself a little bit more. Dan Lanning might also be able to utilize him a little bit better at Oregon. But all of those names, I think, are stars in our sport that I'm excited to watch for this upcoming season. But for me, it has to be Jeremiah Smith as the, no kidding, overall best player going into this season, regardless of position. And let me say this about Jeremiah Smith. Ohio State is counting their lucky stars that Maurice Croyer did not work out in the NFL. Because imagine the precedents that would have been set if Maurice Croyer was able to leave before that usual 3-year benchmark. He goes to the NFL and he ends up killing it in the NFL. Can you imagine the push to possibly see that 3-year rule be reduced to a couple of years, or even what we see in college basketball where it's a one and done situation? That could have been, not saying that it would have happened. The NCAA always works in mysterious ways, and the NFL would obviously have to sign off on it as well. It's their sport and their league at the end of the day. But I say this because Jeremiah Smith specifically, seeing him as a true freshman, he was on a different level. I mean, first and foremost, the fact that he was able to get on the field as a true freshman at a place like Ohio State, where that is always a very deep room to work off of. And yet, not only was he able to get on the field as a true freshman, but he was able to step in and have a monumental role right away. I mean, keep in mind, he was 18 years old. He was just enjoying high school prom a few months prior, before the start of this true freshman campaign. Over 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns. He had another touchdown on the ground as well. So 16 touchdowns in his freshman year. And then he lived that up with another incredible campaign just last year. It didn't end in a national championship, but what it did end in is he was named an All-American, which I didn't see him listed as an All-American in the 2024 campaign, at least not according to sportsreference.com. So if that is true, I don't know how he couldn't have gotten an All-American status. I'm hoping that's not true. I'm hoping that I'm wrong there. But he also finished 6th in Heisman voting. So you look at the overall resume of Jeremiah Smith: 163 catches, over 2,500 yards, 27 touchdowns, and playing in one of the best conferences in the process in college football, being instrumental in multiple playoff appearances as well. And just the sheer fear factor of Jeremiah Smith, too. We have to talk about this for a second. Because of those stats that I was talking about, those 1,300 yards his freshman year, his 1,200 yards plus in the sophomore year campaign. Let's say it was a one-and-done status. If he was able to leave 2 years ago, Jeremiah Smith would have been a first-round pick. He was that good. He was that incredible of a football player. And so Ohio State is incredibly, incredibly thankful that Maurice Croyer did not work out too terribly well in the NFL, because if he did, we might have seen a change in those rules. And as a result of that, we could be talking about Jeremiah Smith leaving a couple of years ago. Now, after this upcoming season, Jeremiah Smith is going to declare. I don't see there being a world where he just turns down the opportunity to be a high first-round pick. It would take something completely disastrous for him to fall out of the first round and for him to then make it more of a mathematical equation in terms of whether he wants to go back to school or not. Dante Moore, he probably would have been a top 5 pick if he left this year, but he's a one of one. Most players in his position would have left for the NFL. Not the case with him. But so I say this because Jeremiah Smith probably would have been that guy 2 years ago. He definitely would have been that guy last year. And when I imagine when he does declare, he'll be wide receiver 1 in the 2027 NFL draft. So I am going to roll with Jeremiah Smith on that one. I am curious though what you guys think down in the comment section, or if you're watching this in the live chat right now, what you guys are thinking in terms of wholeheartedly who is the best player in college football. I mentioned Jeremiah Smith. I'm curious to see if there is other guys that would take the throne of that Ohio State wide receiver, and what kind of impact does he have now that Brian Hartline is no longer his offensive coordinator and his wide receiver coach? Do we see a drop off, or does he continue to do Jeremiah things? That's going to be a fascinating storyline to watch for, I guess, as a side plot for the college football season. So, one more question that we do have here tonight. But before I jump into the last question that we have here tonight, hopefully you guys have been enjoying the live stream, and hopefully you guys have been enjoying a little bit of this mailbag session. If you have, make sure you go ahead, hit that like button, hit that subscribe. I really do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart being able to do that. And let's go ahead and jump into the final question that we have here for the mailbag here tonight. So the last question that we had was from our co-host Reed Napper. He asked, like, who is the sleeper team similar to an Indiana before 2024 who can come out of nowhere this upcoming season? Now, if I had to try to answer this question a couple of months ago, I would have really struggled because we haven't seen anyone like in Indiana. I guess you would have to think of, if I guess in Big Ten terms, you would have to think of Rutgers maybe over in the Big Ten. For the Big 12, it might have been a Kansas, SEC. Arkansas hasn't really done much historically, at least in my lifetime. And then like over in the ACC, maybe like a Syracuse, possibly, or so like that. That's what we're talking about in terms of just talking about the more poverty programs. The one that I did end up deciding on, and this program has been okay, at least in my lifetime. But if you want to talk about the holistic story of college football, this program historically has been absolutely terrible up until about 35 years ago. And so the school that I ended up landing on was Kansas State. Now, no one is absolutely talking about them because of the fact that they do have a brand new head coach in Colin Klein, who famously was their quarterback. He was a Heisman Trophy candidate. And now he's here being a head coach of Kansas State after a stint over at Texas A&M, learning in College Station under Mike Elko. Led his help be a part of a team that made it to the college football playoff. Disappointing exit for Texas A&M, but now has that playoff experience. And now he comes into Kansas State, a team that is not going to come in with a ton of expectations, or at least a ton of hype, because they finished 6-6 in the previous year. And according to, I want to say, the SP Plus rankings, let me see if I can find those SP Plus rankings and see where Arizona State is, or not Arizona State, Kansas State. Kansas State doesn't even crack the top 25 in terms of the SP Plus. So maybe, not an Indiana type of season, but no one's really talking about them at the same time. But I will say this about Kansas State football going into this season. I think Kansas State is squared away to potentially make a run. I think if we see Colin Klein unlock the potential of Avery Johnson and they maintain focus as a team, they do a better job of closing those one-score games, I do think that you could see Kansas State make a leap. And there is a path here if you're looking at the Big 12 this upcoming season. There's a path for Kansas State to make some noise and be a surprise player for the college football playoff. I mean, let's get started here in terms of, I want to say, the top 3 teams. So the top 3 teams that I have in my personal power rankings, whether it's Texas Tech or whether it's BYU or whether it's Utah, those would be my top 3 teams in the Big 12 as of right now. Those 3 teams are not on Kansas State's schedule right now, okay? So they avoid them entirely. And then the 5th best team that I have in Arizona, well, it just so happens that Arizona, you get them at home, right? You get Arizona at home. You also get Houston at home, who's in the top half of the Big 12. Oklahoma State, a team that also rounds out the top half of the Big 12 going into this season. That's at home. Really, the toughest game that they're going to have on their schedule is going to be TCU on the road. Besides that, you're talking about you have Kansas at home, you have Arizona State at home, and who knows what to think of Arizona State going into this year. I'm actually a touch lower on them. They actually start my, they might start in my somewhat bottom half. Or I have to see what I have Arizona State. I actually didn't have it sorted out properly. But I mean the point still stands. Arizona State actually is in my my top half, but Arizona State, don't really know what to think of them going into this year. Cincinnati, what Scott Satterfield's teams look like after the fact that they did just have they lost their last 4 games of the year. And now they lost their starting quarterback, Brandon Sorsby, who's a star player. Kansas, I don't think you can expect much out of Kansas out of right now. We just talked about the Colorado Buffaloes as well. They're on the road. And then Iowa State on the road to end the year. It's a little bit of, it is definitely Farmageddon. Never know what you can get out of a rivalry game. But Iowa State was absolutely devastated in the transfer portal. That is not going to be the same team as what we saw last year, where they were ranked for a decent chunk of the 2025 campaign. So I say all of this because I think there is a general path here for Kansas State to possibly make a run at the college football playoff and to make the Big 12 championship game. Now, I'm just going to pull up their schedule real fast because I just want to make sure you guys can see it too. So here it is. Here's Kansas State's schedule. See if I can pull this in a little bit more. And not really. Hang on. Let me do that. All right, here we go. I'm going to move this. Move to the right. Yeah. All right. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so you can see the rest of the schedule. All right. So this is their entire schedule in a nutshell. I mean, and the non-conference is pretty reasonable too. Nichols, that's an FCS game. That's going to be a bye game. Washington State. Washington State was also somewhat devastated in the transfer portal. They just lost their head coach. And then Tulane, this is not a John Summerall coach team. This is a Will Hall coach team. And, to be nice to Will Hall, I don't have Will Hall on the same level as John Summerall at this time. And that's been well documented on this channel. So I look at this team, and I'm going to be so real with you right now for Kansas State. Get ready to speak 11-1, buddy. I think they can win all of these games on their schedule. The only exception is I do think they get tripped up at TCU in the month of November. I do think they drop that game. And then it's going to depend on what BYU does. Because if BYU, they take care of business, and then they also beat they beat TCU. So BYU's only loss is someone other than TCU, then we could see BYU get in over Kansas State, even though Kansas State would be 11-1 at that point. They could be left out of the Big 12 championship game. And at that point, they would be at the complete mercy of the College Football Playoff Committee. Don't know if that's going to be enough for Kansas State to get into the College Football Playoff, even at 11-1, because I think BYU would have a better resume from last year than Kansas State would have this year. This year, I am projecting Kansas State to have the 62nd strongest strength of schedule in the FBS. Only a few programs in the power conference ranks would have a easier strength of schedule than Kansas State, but there's a path here to go 11-1 and really surprise some people. And then maybe if they play tough in the Big 12 championship game and or even win it, that could be a surprise playoff team. I haven't really seen much about Kansas State being talked about on the timeline, but if I have to go with a really deep sleeper pick, in terms of making a 2024 Indiana type of run. Kansas State, I think, would be the type of team that I would go ahead and circle. Don't know if that would come to fruition, but I think 11-1 is not only possible, I think that's realistic, to be honest, just with how the strength of schedule lines up. And even that TCU game that we talked about, that I think they do end up losing for the record. I actually look at that TCU game, that's a winnable game too. The model, at least at this time right now, would have TCU as a 1-point favorite at home. And that's TCU in Fort Worth. This is not TCU playing on a neutral site field or playing in Manhattan, Kansas. So the model was high, particularly on Kansas State on this one. So I think the Wildcats can make a surprise run to the college football playoff if they do hit that 11-1 mark. And hey, maybe they get a little bit of help. There's some unexpected chaos in other parts of the country. So that 11-1 would be good enough for them to get in, because I do think it would be a hard sell for them to put these guys in over say a 10-2 Big Ten team or a 10-2 SEC team, because I think the strength of schedules in both conferences are going to be better. The Big Ten, there are 18 teams. They all have better strength of schedules than Kansas State. And ditto to the SEC. We just talked about them last Thursday. The SEC has far superior schedules than what Kansas State has. So that's just what I'm looking at from my end. I'm curious to hear what your deep sleeper pick is of the good old-fashioned sleeper picks, your deep sleeper picks for the not national championship game, but to go to the college football playoff. I'm definitely interested to hear your thoughts and how you guys feel about Kansas State football. Definitely let me know in the comments or in the live chat section as well, if you happen to be watching. But hey, in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and get ready to enjoy the national championship game in basketball. I do appreciate you guys coming out and joining us here for a little bit of this mailbag. So Thursday, we are going to finish up our first look preview, like the pre-spring preview that we've been doing with the crew. We are going to do the Big 12 on Thursday. And then we'll get into some fun stuff here as we get into the spring and summer. Try to see if we can get some other YouTubers onto the channel for some collaborations, as well as try to maybe reach out to some head coaches, so maybe see if we can get them on the show as well for some interviews as we continue to progress through the spring and summertime season. But hey, with that being said, guys, thank you guys so much for listening into this week's mailbag. If you enjoyed this, make sure you go ahead, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new. This is Jake from College Football Red Zone signing off. Hoping you guys are all